Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
This is a CNA podcast.
If you've ever been in close proximity to a monkey, you know that they are not to be taken lightly. Over the years, there have been many cases of the common primates being running riot near us. You may have seen viral videos of monkeys slipping into HDB homes and making out like bandits, or others of a secondary school boy negotiating with monkeys to return his school bag. I'm a golfer, and close encounters with monkeys have become part and parcel of the game. Personally, I've had monkeys steal my food right out of my buggy while I'm taking a shot, and they'll grab anything they can find. I'm just glad they haven't taken my car keys or my handphone. But these are just some examples of increasing human-wildlife encounters in Singapore. While other parts of the world may struggle with conflicts involving leopards, elephants, and even lions, city dwellers aren't used to living with wild animals, much less those who willfully intrude into private spaces. But the solution can't be down to just get rid of them. How can we learn to coexist with wildlife? This is where Dr. Andie Ang, president of the Jane Goodall Institute in Singapore, comes in. She's a primatologist and has been involved in the work for more than 10 years. Welcome, Andie. Thanks for joining us in the Climate Conversations.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with your childhood. Most kids want a cat, a dog, a hamster as a pet. But you had a pet monkey when you were 10 years old. How did you end up with one and what was it like?
When I was 10 years old, family relatives who were sailors to Africa, they brought back this juvenile small monkey, brown in color, which is actually quite common in Africa. So to us, we just felt like it's a small animal that needs to be taken care of. So for a few years, I would say, I didn't see anything wrong with that. Nobody told me it was wrong too. I even brought my monkey down on my bicycle and my neighbors would just be curious to say, oh, you have a cute monkey. I guess when I was in secondary school, just a couple of years later, the few hours that I have at home before doing homework, I'll be playing with it. But then most of the time, it would be alone. So you could see that it's walking up and down within a small space that it was confined to, like how stressed animals would be behaving. So that was the first sign to me that it's not very happy. And so it was after contacting a few organizations and individuals that we managed to send it back to Africa.
And it had a name. Oh boy.
Not very creative, but for a 10-year-old, I think that's the best I could do.
I think that was endearing. What would you say was the fondest memory with a boy?
Maybe the most memorable one would be that it would like to sit next to me to groom my hair. You know how monkeys, if you were to observe them in the wild, they would pick apart the hair to take out parasites or any particles, right? So it was doing it to me on my hair. I didn't know what it was. So I just mimicked the behavior, did it back to him. And so I think from him, I learned a lot about animal behavior too.
And Aboy was the reason why you got into primatology. I suppose your earliest encounter with a monkey must have taught you that there's something special, something different about primates.
Because of the few years I had with my pet monkey, I also got to realize the threats that they're facing. Why did I get this monkey all the way from Africa? It's kind of like an illegal wildlife trade. So I got really interested to learn more about the different variety and species of monkeys and how I could help them, which is why in university I enrolled into biology.
So you became an expert who does research on monkeys, and your work on primates have taken you all across Asia. How many kinds have you come up close and personal with?
There are about 600 species of primates in the wild, but I've only seen about 45. Not even 10%, but I'm trying my best. So a few examples, if it's within Asia, outside Singapore, in Japan, the Japanese macaques in onsen, The background of the snow was amazing. And then also in Indonesia, the gibbons, they're calling early in the morning. And imagine you're sitting in this house, watching the forest, sipping coffee, listening to the gibbon calls. It's really quite amazing, the rainforest experience.
So your work revolves around Raffles banded langurs, which are critically endangered primates. How many of them are here in Singapore?
In Singapore, we have 70, so 70. And in Malaysia, we have about 200 to 300. Nowhere else in the world, just in Singapore and Malaysia. So we're talking about a global population size of maybe just under 400, 3 to 400.
I hear they're extremely shy, they're very fast. Hear that you had a bit of a shoulder injury trying to track them down. Can you tell me what happened?
I'm not meant to be a monkey, but I try very hard to be. So, besides the field work where you go to the jungle, you track to look for the animals, we want to come up with methods in order to collect information more efficiently. And so we started to climb trees to put motion sensor cameras on the trees in order to detect animal presence. But that would involve, of course, being professionally trained, certified, getting a permission from National Parks Board, and then doing the actual climbing. It requires a lot of strength, and I'm scared of heights. A lot of problems.
And your work depends heavily on collecting fecal samples. That sounds like fun.
If I were to tell my parents that I'm actually collecting poop for my work, I'm not sure what they would think. So another way in order to collect more information is through their fecal samples. Because in feces, it actually contains a lot of information. It has the DNA of the animal, which can tell us a lot more about the genetics, whether it's healthy or not, what's the relationship with the other individual monkeys in the population. Are they experiencing any inbreeding problems? In the feces, it also contains the DNA of the plants that they have consumed. So by examining the plant DNA, we can also obtain information on the species of plants they have eaten for the past 2 days. Compared to trekking in the forest, observing them through binoculars and camera, maybe there's one species of plants that they were eating. You have to collect the specimens, get it identified. It takes a long time.
That's fascinating. And the primate environments, they're affected by climate change. As you said, there are hundreds of primate species around the world, but then 3/4 of them are actually facing population declines, which is really sad. How concerned are you that the effects of climate change are pushing many of them towards extinction?
On top of climate change, there's also, of course, the associated activities like the deforestation that's really clearing their forests, forcing them to lose their homes and poach from the wild for the trade, for example. Of course, then you have the climate change that would come in because with the changing temperatures and the conditions, different plant species will be affected as well. So they're losing their food source, losing their home, severely affecting their population size. With changing temperatures, the animals in areas where they have extreme drought condition or hot temperatures, the streams might be drying up, there might not be rain. And so in that case, finding water is of essence for those animals.
Hi, I'm Adrian Tan.
And I'm Crispina Robert.
We are the host of a new podcast called Work It.
We're here to get into the essential things that no one tells you about working in company culture, from office politics to dealing with burnout.
If you've ever wanted to eavesdrop on an interesting conversation by the water cooler,
This podcast is for you.
look out for our episodes wherever you get your podcast.
So your main research is geared towards the protection of primates, but you're also invested in the question, how can we, humans, coexist peacefully with nature and wildlife? And the friction between man and nature has been inevitable, like otters eating up very expensive koi fish, or a wild boar attacking a passerby, or monkeys stealing food and trying to enter our homes. Why are we seeing some of these incidences? Should we be concerned?
I think there could be various factors during COVID when people are not allowed to maybe go outdoors to certain areas. They can't go overseas as well. And then there is the easing of the restrictions. You could go out, to nature areas. And so that's when people started to maybe see more of this wildlife that they previously might not have encountered. Then they realized, hey, we have this wildlife. And then also with social media, right, taking photos and putting online, the drones flying to take images and to record the biodiversity in Singapore. And then also with Singapore's aim to transform from a garden city to a city in nature, that also means that we want to integrate more of nature into our lives, into our surroundings. And so with that, it also means that there would be more chances to encounter animals. But if we are not equipped with the knowledge to know how to interact or not interact with wildlife, that's when we might inevitably or accidentally attract them into urban areas or our homes. That's when news articles might say monkey attack, pig attack, otter attack. But news articles usually would be reporting incidents or accidents, right? If it's a monkey that is doing its own monkey business, playing with their own family members, or otters eating fish in the river, it might not come up as the news. So 99% of the time when you read about the news, behaviors that are quite negative, it only happens maybe less than 5% actually on the ground.
But because of those 5%, not so pleasant encounters and traumatic experiences that some people have had when they come into contact with animals, that's why people maybe tend to stay away to avoid them, or because out of fear, or maybe because they just want to give them space. What's the most common misconceptions people have?
If it's got to do with the monkeys in Singapore, one of the misconceptions would be that the monkeys don't have enough food in the forest, which is why they're coming to my home to get food. The monkeys have sufficient food in the forest, and the food that they eat would be plants. They could also take in small animals like lizards, bird eggs, for example. But because the food that humans eat are full of high calories and energy content, that if they were to take those food items, they would get their calorie intake for the day with just a short amount of time. So if we were to leave food out there unattended, or trash bins that are not closed properly, then the animals would stay and get those food.
Other than those misconceptions, then what do you see as the biggest barrier to encouraging more people to coexist with nature and animals?
We want to be close to nature, whether it's the clean air or just the calming effect of nature. But people might not understand that nature contains different aspects. It's not just the beautiful butterflies or the chirping birds that sound really pleasantly to your ears, but there could be wild chickens there, there could be crows, wild pigs, and snakes as well. So some people might be selective about the kind of nature that they want. But if we are selective, then ecosystem will not be intact and thrive.
Let's say we have an encounter with a monkey either in a park or comes through the window or something like that. What should or shouldn't we do?
Firstly, if say we are out in the nature areas and you see monkeys, most of the time they won't be bothering you if you don't bother them. So if you keep a safe distance, you walk away, continue on your path, they'll be fine. But if the monkeys are in your path, you have to see whether there's another route that you can take, or you might need to wait for them to disperse. But if you're on a rush, what you can do is to make some sounds to show them that you are there, to alert them so that you're not actually surprising them when you're walking close. You can clap your hands just in a motion that it's more consistent, just to announce your presence. I'm here, you clap. And also, you need to watch where the babies are, because when they're infants, of course, the adults will be more protective. So you can always try to think in terms of the monkey's point of view. Just like humans, you have your babies or your little ones, you want to be protective of them. So be aware of where the little ones are and don't walk too close to them. When you clap, they would usually disperse from you. And just to make sure you don't bring any plastic bags or 100 plus Coke, walking in the jungle, keep it in your bag. And once you're away from the animals, then you can maybe take out
What
to
if
drink.
you take your item that's very meaningful to you? Car keys or a handphone? Do you chase after them? Do you wait for them to return it to you? I mean, is there a way?
So, in general, if they take your food items, you can forget about it.
Okay.
You just buy another
It's
one.
gone.
Don't need to take it back. Even if you take it back, I don't think you want to consume anyway. If it's non-food related, like your car keys, your phone, or your wallet, they might take it and bring it up to the tree. Wait for them to drop the items. They might be chewing a bit of your wallet, but they won't be eating it. So once you know that it's not food item, they would drop. So you just wait patiently. They would know that it's not food. But you might have to just buy a new wallet eventually once you get back your old one.
Oh, those are great tips. What other efforts can we make in preserving wildlife, protecting endangered animals? Because personally, I thought the ecological bridge that helps animals safely get from one place to another, I thought that was a brilliant idea.
I think the example you gave, like the eco-link, is a good way to connect forests that have been separated or fragmented. But before we get there, to build a bridge to reconnect, it would be good if we can retain existing forests already to prevent cutting through forests and then you have to come in to build something to reconnect. But of course, in Singapore, in such a small area where we have to continue to develop, we can't stop clearing forests. But we can do it in a more, I would say, structured way that has more plans, mitigations in it such that we can minimize impacts to wildlife and the environment as much as possible. So having a good understanding of what's out there, doing research before the development. There are also other things that individuals can do. For example, when you're driving near nature areas, if you can just drive slowly, be more aware, because those animals would be running onto the road sometimes in order to get to another forest patch. Or you can also spend time to volunteer with organizations to go out there to collect information, to provide to national agencies in order to use those information to protect species.
And Andy, how do you then envision the future of monkeys in Singapore?
I'm hoping that when I talk to people or when people talk to me about monkeys, the adjectives that they use will not always be naughty, mischievous, cheeky, and aggressive, but coming more from the point of view of appreciating our native biodiversity. It could be that they're cute. I'm biased. They could be interesting. They can be really playful. They can be peaceful. So rather than all the negative terms, it would be good if they could see the other side of the animals as well. So I'm just hoping that not just for monkeys, but for native wildlife in Singapore that might not be typically charismatic, they could get a fair share of love from Singaporeans as well.
Andy, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to my guest, Andie Ang, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, do remember to subscribe and like this podcast so you know when a new episode drops. You can find CNA's climate and sustainability coverage online at cna.asia. The team behind this podcast is Joanne Chan, Jacqueline Chan, Daniel Lee, and Crispina Robert. And I'm Julie Yu, signing off.